Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, friends, welcome to this webinar on accelerating CCUS in the cement sector, brought to you jointly by the Clean Energy Ministerial CCUS initiative and the Global Cement and Concrete Association. My name is Juho Lepponen, coordinator of CEM CCUS, and I'll be co-hosting this session together with my great colleague and friend Claude Lorea from CEL for Change, previously GCCA. We're really pleased to bring this webinar to you today. Over the past several years, the global cement sector has really taken a leading position in CCUS deployment, and we're starting to see the early fruit of that leadership. Great speaker lineup today. We'll be hearing from Winston Beck of Heidelberg Materials, Olaf Bauer-Nielsen of the Norwegian Ministry of Energy, Eileen Torres Morales of Stockholm Environment Institute, and also from the leadership group for industry transition, or LEAD IT. And of course from Thomas Guillot, who leads GCCA, and myself and Claude, we will do our best to keep us on track and on time. We have three sections at today's event. We'll start with reflections on the historical opening of Heidelberg Materials cement CCUS project in plant in Brevik, hearing from both Winston and Olaf on this topic. We'll then look into the future and where the next cement sector CCUS projects are going to come from. And Eileen will be telling us all about that. And finally, we will look into some novel policy concepts to really continue the drive to deploy carbon capture on cement installations. And Thomas will talk about the chain of custody and the book and claim model that the industry is developing. Now, before we hand over to Winston and Olaf for the first section, Claude and I will just briefly tell who CEM CCUS and GCCA are, for those who might not know. So the Clean Energy Ministerial is a voluntary group of roughly 30 countries across the world with a single mission to accelerate clean energy transition and deployment. CEM membership is global, and the vast majority of all clean energy action in the world really happens within CEM countries. And under the CEM mothership, if you like, there are several clean energy and decarbonization work streams, and one of them, your co-host today, is the CEM CCUS initiative. And we are a unique group of 16 governments with the aim to accelerate CCUS. You see our member flags on the left-hand side. And however, we're not government only. You will see on the right-hand side several logos of partner organizations who we collaborate with very closely. And you see GCCA there as well, with whom we have a very fruitful collaboration going on since many years. You may also recognize some of the other logos there, for example, the CEM IDDI, the Industry Deep Decarbonization Initiative, which may be known to some of you, or the Net Zero Industries Mission, who we collaborate with. So that's enough from my side, and Claude, over to you.
Yeah, good afternoon or good day, everyone, wherever you are listening to us. So yes, was previously GCCA, and I'm still acting on certain topic like CCUS as a GCCA special advisor. So GCCA stands for Global Cement and Concrete Association. GCCA has around 50 members now that are present in all continents and most countries in the world. GCCA is the leading global cement and concrete association, and GCCA has also a network of national and regional association partners. We can see their names there. They are also from all around the world, including in China, in fact, and GCCA is working together with around 30 partners. You can move on to the next slide, Gio, please. So GCCA really acts as a catalyst to accelerate the progress and the sustainability and more especially the net zero ambition of its members and partners. I'm sure that you're all aware of the GCCA net zero roadmap, where actually we see the essential role that CCUS will play in achieving net zero emission, and basically delivering sustainable concrete for the world. And I think that's enough as an introduction. We will now move on to our first speaker. So as Gio said, to focus on Breivik and this first CCUS project, which was built in Norway. And I will pass the floor to Winston, who is VP Global Public and Government Affairs at Heidelberg Materials. So Winston, the floor is yours.
Yes, thanks very much, Claude, and hello, everyone. Very glad to be here, and also thanks to CCUS, Juho, and the GCCA to organize this webinar. I will talk today about an issue which is indeed central to our company's decarbonization strategy, but also very critical for the implementation of our global sector decarbonization roadmap from the GCCA. And as Claude just introduced at Heidelberg Materials, I mean, carbon capture is no longer a vision, it's a reality. And I will go a bit deeper into what we have done at our project in Breivik, Norway. Next slide, please. I don't know how much, I will not go into any detail here, but I don't know how much you know about us as a company and as a sector. Heidelberg Materials is the largest integrated building material company in the world. We are operating in over 50 markets and producing first and foremost cement and concrete. Concrete is actually the second most used material in the world after water. It's absolutely instrumental for our modern life, but at the same time, it's also very emission and energy intensive. And that is why decarbonization is really a central piece of our corporate strategy. And I think we have already come a large way. We have already made some material impact, as you can see here, over the last 20 years. But it's clear that we need to do more and that we need to address all the different decarbonization levers. But I think my main message here is we are doing everything we can to reduce emission to a maximum. But due to the large amount of process emissions, which are considered unavoidable, CCUS is also absolutely essential. Next slide. And on this slide, again, I will not go into any detail, but I think it gives you a nice overview. That is kind of the product range which we are already having today and which we put on the market. What you can see is that existing technologies, so the traditional decarbonization levers, they can bring our products already down to up to 80% of low carbon. But then I also have to say that we do compromise a lot on the applications these cements can be used. So the performance as well as its characteristics in use. So it is very clear that only carbon capture can bring us to, first of all, net zero, and that without actually compromising on the performance and the applicability of our products. And that is important, for example, if you use it in critical infrastructure like tunnels and bridges. Next slide. So I would like to go a bit more into detail what we have done in our carbon capture project in Norway. So Breivik is really the result of an innovative partnership between the Transport and Storage Consortium Northern Lights and the Norwegian government and ourselves. The Norwegian government funded the project with up to 85%, both in CAPEX and OPEX for the initial 10 years. So the partnership was absolutely crucial in bringing the project to life. We have actually started the project, or we have started talking about the project already exactly 20 years ago in 2005. And then after many years in engineering and testing, we launched the FEED study in 2018. And by 2019, we have produced over 500 reports and many technical drawings and also countless 3D model iterations. But the final production then actually started in 2021. And then we really pushed through rather quickly, and we celebrated what you can see on the right side, technical completion at the end of 2024. In total, around 400 of my colleagues were involved in bringing the project to life, and they have invested more than 1.2 million work hours into the project. And today we have a dedicated team of 14, as we call them, carbon capture, who are actually operating the plant on a daily basis. On the next slide, you can see some of the, I think, key data points. And you can also see the CCS plant on the left in green. So the process begins in the tall green tower, which is the absorber where we capture the CO2. And then from there, the CO2 is compressed, it's liquefied, and it's temporarily stored in our CO2 storage tanks, which can store up to 5,000 cubic meter in compressed CO2. It's then loaded onto ships and transported over 4 days to the along the Norwegian coast to the island of Oisgarden, where we store the CO2 in a specific reservoir 2.6 kilometer beneath the seabed via a dedicated pipeline. And in total, we are capturing 400,000 tons of CO2 annually at our plant. We are using an amine-based CCS technology, and that's 50% of the plant's emissions. And with that, we can produce around about 500,000 tons of low carbon clinker every year. Next slide. And so pretty much around 1 month ago, so as I said, we had technical completion by the end of last year. And on the 18th of June, we then celebrated the launch of the plant. On the right side, you can see a picture of our CEO together with the Norwegian Crown Prince at the opening. The Norwegian Energy Minister, by the way, and several of his colleagues were also present at the celebration. And as I stressed before, I mean, the public-private partnership in this consortia was absolutely crucial. I think without the support, endurance, and also the dedication of the Norwegian government, the project would not have happened. And since the launch of the project, we have already loaded several ships, and we are now finalizing the process to put the entire value chain into motion. And I think I can say that the first results are already very encouraging, and we believe that maybe the ramp-up phase will even be shorter than we have envisaged previously. Next slide. But Brevik is really just the beginning of our journey when it comes to the rollout of CCUS across our global carbon footprint. You can see here where we are a bit with the CCUS projects which we have already publicly announced. I think the next really very important step is Padeswood, where I hope we have something to announce very soon. And then we are also progressing quite a lot with our project in Canada. Both of them are full scale, so the entire plans of the emissions of the plants. And in addition to that, we of course continue to invest in R&D, and we are piloting different capture technologies like Oxycal in Bulgaria, for example, or also Oxyfuel in Mergelstetten. Current focus is of course on Europe and North America, where the markets are more mature, and we see that the incentives and some of the necessary regulations already exist. But as soon as we see that in other markets maturing as well, I think we can also roll it out in other jurisdictions. Next. So, I mean, as I explained at the beginning, we are a cement company, not a CCS technology company. But I do spend a lot of my time talking about CCS, while I should spend much more time, to be honest, to talk about the green cement, which is coming out of Brevik. So in that case, so we started the commercialization strategy of the product also around about a year ago, I think. And our customers will have two options how to buy evoZero. One of it is the physical product, which will be directly shipped out of Brevik. It's directly located at a port, so quite well located to serve the Scandinavian market. But you can actually also buy what we call virtual product, which is when basically a customer, which for example sits, as you can see here on the left in Spain, he can buy our cement from our local plant close to his site, but then he will get delivered the respective carbon certificate from Brevik, and that is what we call multi-site mass balancing or chain of custody models. And why we do it that way, we actually believe that this is absolutely essential to build a business case for CCS. because it allows us to reach first mover customers. So those customers which are actually interested in net zero cement, also in markets where CCS technology is not yet actually being rolled out. And we are using a 3-step approach to make sure that we have a full product assurance and verification, meaning that we are tracking and accounting for each ton which has been stored via a carbon bank. We are using blockchain technology to verify that there is no double accounting. And we also have a third-party verification that ensures the full traceability of the process and makes sure that there is a one-to-one matching with the virtual CO2 saving certificate and the actual grey cement being sold. Next slide. So we are convinced that the decarbonization, even despite some of the geopolitical uncertainties, that decarbonization is accelerating. And for us, it's not just an environmental imperative, but it's also from an industrial and regulatory viewpoint extremely important. And that is why we have implemented a lot of measures, going from traditional decarbonization levers all the way to CCUS. And I think I want to leave you with 3 main messages here on the slide. One of them is, yes, we're doing everything we can to reduce emissions to a minimum, but CCS is absolutely essential. We are driving CCUS projects around the globe, and we also continue with the R&D. And now we need to start the commercialization. So we really also need to make sure that there is a market for low carbon, ultra low carbon, and net zero products. So going forward, I think it's absolutely key that we continue collaboration among the industry with our value chain partners, but even more so, I think, with policymakers and society, so that we ensure that the necessary regulation is also being ruled out, that we have funding support in the early breakout period, and that there are lead markets which make sure that the market actually exists.
Thank you very much, Winston. Great, and congratulations again for getting that project started. Before we move to Olaf, if you allow, you showed a nice sort of a graph with your future projects that you're already developing. What from Brevik is transferable, or are they all just very unique and very different projects, or are there key technical aspects or learnings that you can take from Brevik to the other projects?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the Brevik project is absolutely crucial for us as a company and for the rollout of CCUS projects elsewhere, but actually, I believe also quite important for the sector overall. Until now, I think we had more than 1,500 visitor groups looking at the project. So the interest is also huge. And it's really not just about the infrastructure and the project itself, right? It's about building capabilities in order to scale now these projects across the group. So meaning now in Brevik, we are collecting the data, we are building the know-how, and we are also, what is very important, developing actually the talent, the skills that can then implement the project elsewhere. And it is very much about building a chemical plant on top of a cement plant, right? So we are learning a lot, and this is very new processes for us as well. So I think there are the main learnings are, first of all, that we really need to get moving. I mean, our Norwegian colleagues took a lot of risks 20 years ago when they started the project, and now we are kind of harvesting the benefits of it. And we also need to get moving with other projects at the same time. The second one is, as I mentioned before, I mean, it's not a coincidence that the project is located in Norway. First of all, the location was ideal, but second of all, it was made possible through the strong support by the Norwegian government and the co-funding. So the work with policymakers from the very early start of the project is absolutely crucial. And the last one is maybe that we also, cement is a very local business, and we always only thought about our own production and our direct customers. But I think we need to stop thinking in these silos, because the net zero product, evoZero, is much more complex, and we need to talk with the value chain and the pipeline and storage operators much early on in order to match timelines, to de-risk the project and secure that there is no delays. So we really need to start dialogue with all the partners very, very early on in the project.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Winston, and looking forward to seeing the next steps from Heidelberg Materials and other companies too. And to round off the Brevik and this development with the first project now, I'd like to hand it over to Olaf Bauer-Nielsen from the Norwegian Energy Ministry to give a short commentary, not a presentation, but a short commentary on from the government side. So Olaf, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Winston and Njo. As you mentioned, I'll quickly run through some of the Norwegian government's perspective on this, specifically on the cement sector and CCS. If I were to go through the whole long ship story, I think it would be here all afternoon. But the first hurdle for the Norwegian government was making value proposition for investment. So as Winston mentioned, the business cases are often not viable without public support. So there's cost, transport and storage costs, huge upfront costs, and the revenues are uncertain, depends on carbon price and green premiums. So subsidies like the ones Heidelberg have received are crucial to de-risk early projects. And we're talking about a 5.4 billion Norwegian krones investments, that's CapEx and 10-year OpEx from the Norwegian government. And this is included in the 22 billion Norwegian krones investment in the whole Longship project. In addition to these subsidies, we also need carbon removal credits, which for the investors, I mean, and they can create new revenue streams for negative emissions. But currently they're limited to the voluntary market, and they're unpredictable and small scale. So we need clear rules, standards, and public recognition to scale this up. In addition, the Norwegian government in future will apply green public procurement, which the government can create demand for low carbon products like green cement. And long-term contracts or quotas could help support early movers. And we believe this sends strong market signals and help justify investments in CCS. And if you go to the next slide, you as Winston mentioned, the second largest hurdle is coordination between all the partners in this. So of course CCS manages three parts: capture, transport, and storage, and these all must align. All actors need commitment long-term and in sync. And for us here in Norway, the state plays a key role as a coordinator and risk reducer. And as on the right side of the screen, our goal for the long term is a liquid market, but we're still a few years away from that, we believe. But for now, it is strategic public partnership that is the essential mover for this. And if you go to the last one, I'll just quickly run through what we see as the future here and for our investment going forward. We need to move from demonstration to broader deployment, not just in Brevik, but across the whole sector. And we see some investment opportunities other than in full-scale industrial capture projects outside of Brevik. And lessons from the Longship project is crucial, but they cannot all rely on the same model for every project. So being fluid in how you do these individual projects and not just using the same model for every project, I think will be crucial going forward. And secondly is the subsidy scheme. So I think I'll get some questions on this, but I can't go into too much detail because the government hasn't published the full scheme yet. But we will introduce competitive allocation of support and reduce market risk by either contract of difference or another support scheme. And this will create predictable revenue streams and better investment conditions. In addition, the government will coordinate procurement of infrastructure and technology deployment. So the government will still be investing in this. And we think this will make sure the 2030 targets for the Norwegian government will be reachable, and the early rollout to reach these 2030 targets. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olaf. Really interesting. Before we move on to the next speaker, I'm curious, can you give us an indication of some timeline, for example, for the ideas that are put forward here? So, for example, auction with contract for difference, when do you think that the Norwegian government could put that in place?
It will be a part of the August or the budget for 26. So this will be government negotiations in late August. And our plan is to launch a competitive support scheme for CO2 capture. Targeting auction is 27. So this will focus on negative emissions, but also support project for mixed biogenic and fossil CO2 streams. Let me see. Yeah, I can't give you a number on the support scheme. This is not public yet, sorry.
No worries, but I think that just CFD is nicely aligned with then the 2030 target. So that's quite great to see. Thank you. I see we have many questions in writing. Jo and I are keeping an eye on the question and discussing how we will manage. If there are direct questions to some speakers, you can maybe try to answer them, and then we will manage the other question along this. But now, without further ado, I will pass on to Elaine, who is a associate researcher at the Stockholm Environment Institute, and actually leading this work for LEADIT. But she will also tell us what LEADIT is exactly. So, Elaine, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Claude. Hope you can now see my screen. Yes. So thanks a lot, Clean Energy Ministerial, CCUS Initiative, and GCCA for inviting LEADIT to share today with you some of the trends from the Green Cement Technology Tracker. This is an ongoing collaboration that we have between the GCCA and LEADIT. My name is Aileen Torres Morales, and I work as a research associate at the Stockholm Environment Institute, where the LEADIT Secretariat is hosted. So let me first begin by explaining to you what LEADIT is. And LEADIT is the acronym for the Leadership Group for Industry Transitions. It is the first high-level initiative on reaching net zero emissions from heavy industry. And it was initiated after the Climate Action Summit in 2019. It is co-chaired by the governments of Sweden and India. And we have a vision and a mission, of course. And our overarching vision is to align heavy industry with the Paris Agreement by 2030. This in order to reach net zero emissions by 2050. For this, we work on three main work streams or areas, which are fostering public partnerships, public-private partnerships, mobilizing resources, and supporting knowledge sharing. And there's where there is a huge role for the tracking initiatives that we host at LEADIT. And LEADIT is a membership group based, it's a membership-based group, that is composed by both countries and companies. As of today, 18 countries spread across the world, both the North and the South, are members of LEADIT, and 27 companies across different heavy industries make part of the group. In general, we believe a lot in the strength of partnerships. And because of this, we like to work hand in hand with partners that can help us to enable globally the conditions to build a pipeline of breakthrough green projects. And one of these partners, which is very close to us, is the Global Cement and Concrete Association, with whom we have an ongoing partnership to track the pace of the technological transition in cement decarbonization. And here is where the Green Cement Technology Tracker comes into place. It has been developed by the GCCA and led it. It's an open source tracker that is highlighting the process on currently 2 key technological levers for net zero cement and concrete. The first one is carbon capture, and the second is cement saving technologies, specifically including kilns that are being used to produce calcined clay. This tracker supports knowledge sharing, and it is currently hosted by LeadIt, and we want to share with you some screenshots from the Cement Technology Tracker visuals. You can see on the left side the carbon capture projects tracker, and on the right side the kilns that have been announced globally for calcined clay production. On the LeadIt trackers, we have a few things to keep in mind. The first one is that we don't include confidential information. This is because transparency is our first priority in the tracker. So we only include publicly available information of announcements of projects that are being promoted by the companies and that are now perhaps initiated. And it's an open source set of information. So please, if you have any doubts after this presentation, you can go to our website, check the maps, or even download the data set as the figure to the left suggests. There is an Excel file that can be downloaded. And at the same time, we have some validation, which we work hand in hand with the GCCA for the data publication, and also in this collaboration, when they spot something that maybe could have been improved, then we make those changes. And there is a source verification and traceability of all projects. This means that every data point that it's included in the dataset has a link, a publicly available link from where the information was extracted from. There are some caveats, and for example, if the announcement has incomplete data or if it is not public, it might be overlooked, as well as if the announcement is in a language that it's not possible to be translated. Use it, for example, Google Translate, or if it is not in English, Spanish, or Swedish, then it might be overlooked. With this context, let's now dive into some insights from the cement carbon capture project. So here I'll show you 2 figures. And I want to highlight that in this specific one that we have on the right-hand side, we have 64 commercial projects. However, disclaimer, in total in the tracker, we have 76 projects. The remaining 12 correspond to research projects. We have, as you can see, quite a concentration of projects in Europe. And from the projects that you see on the graph, there are some that are already operational, and these commercial projects that are operational correspond one full-scale one that was just introduced to us. This is the Brevik CCUS, the world first industrial scale carbon capture facility at a plant, at a cement plant. And the projects in Asia include demonstrations and pilot projects. Now, when we zoom out to the global picture, including both the commercial and the research projects, we see that there is a concentration, as I said previously, in Europe, but also we see that a few countries in Asia and in North America are also moving ahead. But you can also notice that there are not so many projects developing perhaps on these zones. And there might be many large cement producing nations, especially in emerging and developing economies, that currently have no projects on the record on CCUS. But when we compare to what we have on the calcined clay kiln tracker, we see that perhaps the technological pathways are different and are, not currently on CCUS. This is to say that the introduction of decarbonization technologies in emerging and developing economies depends heavily on the context and the local conditions, and that the expansion of cement decarbonization technologies at the pace that we need to reach net zero by 2050 will need increased support from the global front runners. This is key to transmit lessons learned, to transmit know-how, to perhaps develop or co-develop technologies that suit the global context, and to support financing or infrastructure development efforts. Now, going to the timeline and the planned scale of the projects that are currently announced and part of the database that we work with. Most of the projects today and in the past years have been on demonstration, pilot, and feasibility study scale. But we see a shift from 2026 onwards. The majority of the projects are planned and are targeting to be full-scale deployments, which is very interesting. And then what technologies are being used for this? So post-combustion capture remains to be the dominant approach, and it's being featured in nearly half of the projects. And then the second one on a frequency would be oxy-fuel. And you may also ask yourself, well, I see a few names here. This doesn't make some sense, because technologies like cryogenic, membrane-based carbon capture, algae-based capture are included in these figures. And we acknowledge that these are forms of post-combustion. However, we list them here separately because this reflects how the companies describe the technologies in their public announcements. And these helped us to maintain the tracker as transparent as possible and not to make subjective decisions of what each project is. To almost wrap up, let me show you a visual timeline of what the future, the coming future is looking like. You can see, as per public announcements, which project by its name are planned to be online, specifically, not only, well, especially for full scale, we have a big concentration of projects, but also the demonstrations, the feasibility studies, and pilots that are upcoming. So to summarize, our Green Cement Technology Tracker CCUS database is composed from 76 projects in total today, of which 64 are commercial. Out of all these projects, the data shows us that around 40 million tons of CO2 are being planned to be captured. This is still to be seen as the projects advance. And also around $16.8 billion have been announced that to be put into the investment for these projects. On scale 2026 onwards, there are many expectations for the majority of projects that are being planned to be full-scale deployment. And on geography, Europe is currently leading. However, we also see that there are some movements coming from Asia and North America, and we also see and hope that this development will also be moving towards the introduction of carbon capture in developing and emerging economies, depending on the local context. With this, I thank you very much. And I will stop sharing so that you take over, Juho.
Okay, thank you, Eileen. Thank you very much. Really interesting and wonderful to see that multitude of different projects in the cement sector being recorded in your tracker. And there's a fairly strong sort of leadership position in these announced projects in Europe. Have you any comment why that is?
Yes, I mean, I guess for those of us that are joining from Europe, you might also be aware that there might be some conditions that could make attractive for companies to have these projects. But at the same time, I guess it's important to have some awareness that what is currently being tracked in the tracker, excuse my redundancy, are project announcements. Therefore, it is yet to see, because as Ole mentioned previously, he mentioned like many steps that need to be taken in order for having a project to be realized. So there are many pieces that need to fall into place before these projects are actually up and running. And this is why we see and believe that it's key to track with data what is happening, because if we don't measure the progress, then it's very difficult to understand why this specific project arrived to final investment decision or why it didn't. So we'll wait and see how the project development goes.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Eileen, for all those insights, and we'll make sure that the QR code is with everybody after the event, so that they can go and have a look at the tracker. Great stuff. Okay, well, next up then, we've looked at the present announcements. We looked a little bit at the future body of projects that could come up, but then we need mechanisms to drive these. And now we're turning over to you, Thomas. Book and claim and chain of custody. Can you tell us what these are all about, please?
Yeah, sure, Gio. I mean, I joined the panel to thank you for the invitation to speak actually on to present the book and claim on what we are doing with GCCA. So I think you have a presentation actually.
I do. I will just put it up.
But as I know the slide, I will start by explaining that GCCA has developed a roadmap to actually go to net zero by 2050. I mean, this roadmap is basically a roadmap that we believe is achievable with the actual technology. On the proof is that now we are actually working with Breivik, or Breivik is online, so this technology is actually existing really. And you see the weight here of GCCA, the weight of CCUS, sorry, in the total of the levels. So I mean that's quite an important weight. And of course the question is, initially what was it about? And we had to work a lot on demystifying, I want to say, the technology, making sure that people understand what is capture, what is storage, what is used. But also now the question is, how does it pay for itself? And I saw a few questions that are actually going into that direction. So if you go to the next slide. The question is relevant because indeed, while a lot of the traditional measures to decarbonize the alternative fuels, the lowering of the clinker factor are solutions that are payable in the actual concept. And here you see the abatement cost curve of the US. You see that there is what we call a set of technologies that we call deep decarbonization that includes CCUS, but not only. That requires a significant additional investment. So going low carbon is relatively, I don't want to say simple, but it's feasible, right? While going deep or net zero with deep decarbonization is something expensive and requires possibly a different nature of incentive, right? So if you go to the next slide, you see actually the different set of incentives that exist today. So of course you have government incentive, and in particular the grant, the contract for difference, the Article 6 when they relate to the government agreement. You see the support from financial institutions around different fundings, different opportunities of transitioning on lending money at a preferential price. You have also all what relates to philanthropy, but they also exist a number of market solutions which fall on those what we call the chain of custody, and falls under the discussion on who is finally buying and who is ready to actually buy net zero material and ready to invest into these technologies, right? If you go to the next slide. Basically, this concept of certificate on chain of custody, and we need to spend a little bit of time on that to explain what's the difference between, in particular, credit and certificate. I mean, I saw some of the questions you had on credit. There is a massive difference between the two things. The credit, basically, you are in obligation as an abater to actually transfer the ownership and therefore the accountability or the accounting of the credit to the person that purchased the credit. So it's from scope 1 to scope 1, right? Scope 1 to scope 1. Here in certificate, we talk about connecting decarbonizing activity to buyers. So from scope 1 to scope 3. And as you can imagine, in the case of Brevik, 100% of the net zero cement coming out of the Brevik plant would not necessarily find its customers in the Brevik regions, right? I mean, you don't have today all the buyers in that region that say, okay, look, I want to buy and I want to invest into these technologies, and I'm ready to actually pay the green premium or the technology premium if you want to go near zero. So the logic of that is to try to connect on a larger market the buyers, the potential buyers, to the technologies. And if you think about that, it is actually what has happened in the past in other sectors. I'm citing in particular the electricity. I mean, when at the beginning of the century, we pushed for green projects that were at the time more expensive than the actual solutions that were existing through windmill, etc. I mean, there was the development of these green certificate of origin, some people call them. You have the same thing with the sustainable aviation fuel. And make no mistake, sustainable aviation fuel today relates to technology. It doesn't relate to forest or to offset, etc. It's pure technology, and it's the decarbonization of the fuel from the airline industry. On the same way, when you fly from, I don't know, let's say Beijing to London, your flight is not necessarily filled with sustainable aviation fuel. You have this sustainable aviation fuel with some on the flight, and you are proposed to actually neutralize, not offset, neutralize your flights, and that's how you do it. So this is about identifying really how much CO2 was saved, right? And putting that in a certificate and say, look, as Winston explained earlier, virtually transfer the ton of CO2 that was saved to the buyer and say, look, I want to buy, I want to neutralize my apartment, I want to neutralize my building, or a country, I want to neutralize actually my infrastructure, right? So if you go to the next slide, it's pretty fundamental that we actually work on that. Go to the next slide, Joe, please, if I may.
Yeah, hold on, just okay, there we go.
So yes, so what we are doing on that, it's very important that we actually describe what can be done, because you need, of course, very, very strict rule. I mean, the integrity of this certificate is fundamental to all this development. So I mean, what we have been doing at level of DCCA, we've been doing a major effort, in particular, to understand the concept of chain of custody. What does it mean? What are the implications? What are the rules that should prevail? You know, these things. On all that, start to write, you know, what you call the rule book, the rules of the game. Say, okay, look, this can apply, this cannot apply, right? On being very discriminative for the sake of transparency and integrity, again, I said. We also worked on different, you know, in the strategic direction to define, you know, where the schemes should go and how it should be applied, in particular with regards to the technologies, you know, fitting on making sure that these schemes shall apply only for the deep decarbonization technologies. Of course, you don't want to give, you know, windfall profit to, you know, lower or easier solutions. You want to make sure that the green premium, if you want, goes to the decarbonization of the industry itself, right? And last but not least, I mean, we have been mapping the different stakeholders to engage, and that's what we're going to do in the next phase, to engage and to discuss, you know, the modalities and to make sure that we have the largest acceptance possible of the scheme itself. If you go to the next slide, we have here described 6 strategic pillars, which are fundamental in our view in the discussion of this book on claim system on the chain of custody. First, it has to relate to deep decarbonization. So, I mean, it is not to deliver a windfall profit. It is really to buy near zero solutions, the expensive near zero solutions. And if you see in the low carbon rating that we have launched, this is really the solutions that are at the very bottom of the rating, making sure that the money again goes to the decarbonization and not windfall profit for advantageous situations that would not reflect the strong investment. The second thing, we need to make sure that we enable the decarbonization globally. We saw the cost curve. This is true in every part of the world. On cement, on concrete, 80% of the production of the material is done in the global south. So we have a challenge there. And we know that in many of these countries, in most of these countries, the big subsidies or the big support that is there that relates to the innovation and to the deployment, initial deployment of this technology will not be there, right? So they will have to focus maybe more on infrastructure. So we need to have different solutions, and we need to make sure that this works. Also, we need to be technology agnostic. So the idea is not to work only with CCUS. We don't say that CCUS is the only solution. We have to embed into this principle all the deep decarbonization solution that includes electricity, that includes at times new materials that are also near zero. Fundamental transparency, integrity. This is something that I've been repeating. We want this scheme to be understandable by people, and we want the buyers to be clear of what they are buying. There is no trick. It's just technology, and it's just real pure net zero material. Finally, two elements. Of course, the standard setter. So this should be revised, approved, certified, and we will work in the next weeks and months with the standard setters across the board to make sure that such solutions are accepted. Again, it is accepted. It is accepted in other sectors. It is accepted in electricity, as I said, in aviation, and other sectors like maritime business, like road business, are also discussing these solutions. On the latter side, steel and chemical industry. And finally, yes, we need to discuss with the buyers, the first mover coalition, as we had previously mentioned, people like this that will say, okay, look, we are on board and we will actually create the demand. First mover coalition, but also countries. Countries need also to commit on this scheme. So as a summary, maybe we believe that this new type of investment requires some more sophisticated system. I mean, this system exists. They have been deployed in other industry. We are working on making that happen. There are three main things that we want to do on to trigger the demand. The first one is really to work on the scope 3. So make sure that companies can buy that and cover that scope 3 related to cement and concrete, and not just everything, cement and concrete related to construction. Second, work with public procurement to make sure that also the governments can actually commit themselves to the near zero solutions. And of course, work with the different green building certifications to explain and to make sure that this is actually embedded and apprehended into the actual systems. So this is really based on the concept of free mass balance and book and claim. And we believe that this system is really a solution that brings opportunity to invest in deep decarbonization. And the idea that we have is really to accelerate the deployment, right? So you've seen all these projects that Eileen has presented. We don't have that many that are actually FID, and certainly having such solution will help to de-risk the model, right? To have buyers committed at the end of the chain and to accelerate the rate of getting this project FID and to guarantee the implementation of this project in the regions that I mentioned, but also in the rest of the world, as you see that most of the projects were in a few geographies, right? So we believe that it's really a very credible scheme, providing that you respect the integrity and the quality of the certificate and of the certification to achieve this reduction. Voilà. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you so much. Gio, what do you think? We have time for a short question, direct question to Thomas. Yes, okay. Thomas, just one short question to summarize. What's next now, and especially what would be the policy ask relating to seeing such a scheme flying now?
Well, I think as I said, I mean, this is a fairly complex system to build. So I mean, we have to socialize the reality of these solutions, and we have to make sure that people understand. I mean, that while being complex to guarantee the integrity, but finally relatively simple. I mean, I think we don't ask ourselves too many questions, when we buy green electricity, when you say, okay, I'm ready to actually commit a little more to buy green electricity, or when I say I would just want to buy green because I want to buy green, actually it's not always cheaper anymore in the case of electricity. But also the same, I mean, in sustainable aviation fuel, it's also something that works relatively fine. So we want to make sure that all these learnings from these sectors are actually integrated and that we meet with the standard setter and with the authorities to have this solution accepted. We strongly believe that this is a need to really aggregate the initial demand. So you create really this lead market. I mean, everybody talks about lead market. We create this lead market and we gather the one that are the first movers. Say, look, guys, if you want to go net zero, that's a possibility in the cement sector. And your purchase will how do you say, suck out the concretization of all the projects that are existing in the pipeline. And you saw the quantity of projects. I mean, there are many projects that are waiting here, and certainly we would benefit from de-risking the business case of this project.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Gio, back to you.
Yeah, no, okay, 2 minutes perhaps left. Clock says 3, but maybe we aim for 2. But we could take a couple of the questions that came in the Q&A tab. Just rapid fire questions and hoping for rapid answers. Winston, mostly to you, why only 50% capture at Brevik?
I think I answered that already in writing. I mean, it's because we are using the rest of the waste heat, right, for the kiln, for the dissolver process, because we are using amine. And that's why we limit it to 50%. And also keep in mind the project was planned 10 years ago. So all the additional projects I showed are full carbon capture of the entire plant's emissions.
Great. Yeah. And a second rapid fire one to you as well, Winston. Can Evo Zero be sold in Asia?
Well, at the moment, we are offering that the physical project, obviously not. That's in the Scandinavian market, and Evo Zero Virtual we are offering for the moment in Europe.
Okay. Maybe another one which is not in the Q&A tab, but it's more that Thomas, to you and the chain of custody book and claim models. So is Evo Zero a practical way to do it, one of them, or are there things that are sort of different in the
industry? It is absolutely. I mean, Evo Zero is leading on. I mean, by definition, it's the first attempt on more than attempt actually the concrete realization of this scheme. I think there is a relative success on the rendezvous. And yes, it is actually a very good example of what we can do. I mean, the reflection on the global scale. Yes, we have to think about that. We have to see how this applies in different geography. Again, respecting the specificities of the regions, respecting the fact that you have an element of competitivity into all this. And by competitive, I mean the rule of competition, right? That needs to be looked at. And making sure that again we respect the integrity and the traceability of the credit of the certificate, that is being proposed to the market.
Great. Okay, well, I think we're coming to the hour, and we should probably wrap up what has been a really nice session. We've looked at recent announcements and recent real developments. We've also looked at what could be there in the future and touched upon also what kind of mechanisms could drive the future projects. And I think that's really a nice package of different content, which will be available on the internet. You'll receive a link to the recording very shortly. Claude, thank you very much for co-hosting this with me. And Olaf, Eileen, Winston, and Thomas, thanks so much for the wonderful content that you provided. And everybody out there following, thanks so much for your time and interest in today's program.
Thank you indeed. Thank you, Gio, and thank you to GCC for...
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks to you.
Thanks to you.
See you all soon.
Thank
Have a
you.
great summer.